Ah, look who's still standing. Yeah, you. Sitting there with that storm behind your eyes, that weight on your chest you can't explain to anyone anymore. They're still talking about it, aren't they? That thing you did, that moment when you snapped, when you moved, when you finally stopped asking for permission and just took what was always yours. They're still dissecting it in their group chats, still trying to decode it, still whispering your name like it's a case study they can't close. And you know what the funniest part is? They think it changed you. They think something broke inside you that day, like you were corrupted or possessed or finally revealed as the monster they always suspected you were. But here's the truth they're too terrified to admit. It didn't change you at all. It revealed you. It ripped off the mask you wore for their comfort, the filter you used to make yourself digestible, the cage you built with your own hands just so they could sleep at night. That thing you did, that insane, unforgivable, unforgettable move, it wasn't a breakdown, it wasn't a mistake, it wasn't you losing control, it was you finally remembering who the hell you've always been. Underneath all that performance, all that people-pleasing, all those years of shrinking yourself into something bite-sized and non-threatening. You didn't transform into something new. You just stopped pretending to be something you never were. And now they're terrified because they realize they never actually knew you at all. See, they loved the version of you that bent, the version that apologized for breathing too loud, for wanting too much, for existing outside the lines they drew around you. They loved you controllable, manageable, predictable, safe. They loved you when you were a story they could edit, a narrative they could spin, a project they could fix or break depending on their mood that day. But that thing you did, it erased their entire manuscript. It torched the character they wrote for you and revealed the author underneath, the one who's been silent, observing, cataloging every lie, every manipulation, every tiny little betrayal they thought you didn't notice. You weren't oblivious, darling. You were patient. And patience, when weaponized, is the most terrifying thing a person can possess. They thought you were weak because you were kind. They thought you were naive because you forgave easily. They thought you were blind because you gave second chances, third chances, chances they never deserved and damn sure never earned. But what they didn't realize is that every time you chose peace, you were choosing it consciously, not because you had no other option, but because you were still deciding whether they were worth the alternative. And then one day, the math changed. The scales tipped. The cost-benefit analysis of tolerating their nonsense finally didn't add up anymore, and you made your move. Swift, surgical, irreversible. And now they're scrambling, trying to rewrite history, trying to paint you as the villain, trying to explain to anyone who will listen that you just snapped out of nowhere. But we both know that's a lie, don't we? You didn't snap. You calculated. You didn't break. You decided. That thing you did wasn't random chaos. It was the most deliberate thing you've ever done in your life. It was the moment you stopped negotiating with people who only understood force. Stopped explaining yourself to minds that only processed manipulation. Stop lowering your frequency to match people who were determined to misunderstand you. You drew a line in the sand, and when they crossed it again, because of course they did, you didn't move the line. You erased them from your reality entirely. And that's what they can't forgive. Not what you did, but the fact that you did it without hesitation, without guilt, without looking back. Here's what nobody tells you about that moment, the moment you stop performing humanity for people who wouldn't recognize authenticity if it slapped them. The air gets colder, the world gets quieter, People start looking at you differently. Not with respect, not yet, but with this confused, uncomfortable awareness that something fundamental has shifted. They can't put their finger on it, but they feel it. Your presence carries weight now. Your silence has texture. Your smile doesn't reach your eyes anymore, and that unsettles them more than any words ever could. Because they're used to reading you, used to predicting your next move, used to knowing exactly which buttons to push to get you back in line. But now the manual doesn't work. Now their tactics bounce off you like rain off stone. Now every manipulation attempt they launch just exposes them further while you stand there, unbothered, watching them flail. And that's when the real panic sets in for them, because they realize you're not playing the game anymore. You didn't rage quit. You didn't storm off. You didn't even flip the board. You just stood up, looked at them with eyes that have seen too much and forgiven too often, and walked away like they were furniture. And nothing destroys a manipulator's ego faster than being treated as irrelevant. They'd rather you hate them than ignore them, because hate still means they have power over your emotions. But indifference is the sound of their power dying. Now let's talk about that look they give you now. You've seen it, haven't you? That mixture of fear and fascination, like they're watching a documentary on something dangerous behind safety glass. They want to get close enough to understand what happened to you, but not close enough to risk getting burned by whatever fire you're carrying now. They ask their little probing questions, trying to map your emotional state, trying to find the cracks, trying to locate the old you somewhere underneath this new armor. But every time they look, they just see their own reflection staring back, and they don't like what they see. Because you've become the mirror they've been avoiding their entire lives, the one that shows them exactly who they are, without the filters, without the excuses, without the comfortable lies they tell themselves at 3 a.m. You didn't become cruel, you became honest. You didn't become cold, you became efficient. You didn't become heartless. You just stopped giving your heart to people who were using it as target practice. And there's a precision to you now, a clarity that makes them nervous. You move through the world like someone who knows exactly how much time they have left and refuses to waste another second on performances that don't serve them. You speak less. You choose your battles not because you're afraid of fighting, but because most battles aren't worthy of your energy anymore. And that selectiveness, that discernment, it reads as arrogance to people who are used to you giving everyone equal access. But here's the thing they'll never understand. That thing you did, that moment they can't stop analyzing, it wasn't the beginning of your villain arc. It was the end of your people-pleasing era. It wasn't you becoming someone new. It was you finally giving yourself permission to be who you've always been when nobody was watching. The version of you that doesn't apologize for taking up space. The version that doesn't perform gratitude for the bare minimum. The version that doesn't shrink to make others feel tall. That version has always been there, sitting in the passenger seat, watching you drive carefully between everyone else's boundaries while they trampled yours. And one day, you just switched seats. You let the real driver take the wheel. And now they're trying to figure out how to interact with this version. They're testing boundaries they used to ignore, watching their words around you, second-guessing actions they used to do without thinking. And they're frustrated because you're not giving them the roadmap. You're not explaining the new rules. You're just existing in your truth and letting them figure it out. and that lack of instruction manual is driving them insane. They want you to tell them how to fix it, how to get back to normal, how to restore the dynamic where they were comfortable. But you're not interested in their comfort anymore. You paid for your peace with years of discomfort, and you'll be damned if you're going to give it back now just because they're finally experiencing a fraction of what you endured. Let me tell you what's really happening here. And pay attention, because this is the part they're too scared to say out loud. When you did that thing, that crazy unhinged move they're still gossiping about, you didn't just change the dynamic between you and them. You changed the frequency you operate on entirely. You jumped timelines, you shifted dimensions. You exited their reality and started building your own. And now when they try to reach you, they're getting a disconnected number. They're sending letters to an address you don't live at anymore. They're speaking a language you've unlearned. And the distance between who you were and who you are now, it's not measurable in miles or months. It's measured in lifetimes. You're not the same person who walked into that situation. You're not even the same species. You know what's wild? They wanted you to break. They needed you to break. Because if you broke, if you shattered into a million pieces, they could step over on their way to their next victim. It would validate their entire worldview. It would confirm that people like you, people with hearts and hope and boundaries, can survive in a world like this. It would prove that nice guys finish last, that kindness is weakness, that the meek will never inherit anything except disappointment and therapy bills. But instead of breaking, you bent light. You took everything they threw at you, every betrayal, every lie, every moment they chose themselves over you, and you alchemized it into something they don't have language for yet. You turned your pain into a power source they can't hack, and now they're stuck watching you thrive in a frequency they can't access, stuck seeing you glow with an energy that doesn't come from external validation, stuck realizing that everything they took from you, you didn't actually need in the first place. You were carrying dead weight and calling it loyalty. You were feeding vampires and calling it friendship. You were accepting crumbs and calling it love. And when you finally cut the cord, you didn't fall, you flew. And that's what haunts them late at night when they're scrolling through your social media, looking for signs of the breakdown they predicted. Because you're not broken. You're not bitter. You're not destroyed. You're just done. And done is so much scarier than angry could ever be. Here's what that thing you did actually was. It was a declaration of independence. It was you signing your own emancipation proclamation. It was the moment you stopped waiting for someone to give you permission to live in your full power and just seized it with both hands. You didn't ask if it was okay. You didn't check if anyone would be hurt. You didn't perform the emotional labor of making your liberation comfortable for the people who were comfortable with your oppression. You just moved. Clean, fast, final. And the shock waves are still rippling through their reality because they've never seen someone exit the simulation so smoothly. Most people rage quit. Most people burn everything down on their way out. But you just vanished from their level of consciousness like you were never there at all. And now they're dealing with the aftermath of underestimating you. They're sitting in the ruins of the narrative they built around who they thought you were, realizing they never had the right person in the first place. They were in love with a ghost, arguing with a hologram, manipulating a mannequin, while the real you was always somewhere else. Taking notes, building escape routes, planning your exit strategy with the patience of someone who's played the long game before. You weren't surprised by their betrayal, you were prepared for it. You weren't shocked by their true colors, you were just waiting for them to show their hand before you showed yours. And when you finally played your card, it wasn't just game over for them, it was proof you were never playing the same game at all. Let's go deeper into what they're really afraid of when they look at you now. It's not that you changed, remember, we established that lie already. It's that you revealed capacities they never knew you possessed. Capacities for ruthlessness when necessary, for detachment when required, for cutting people off with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. They thought those traits belonged only to people who were born cold, people who never felt anything. But you proved something far more terrifying, that warmth and kindness aren't weaknesses to overcome. They're choices made by people strong enough to also choose violence in simply deciding not to. You showed them that the gentle person is only gentle by choice, and that choice can be revoked at any time without warning. They're scrambling now, trying to retrofit their understanding of you to include this new data, and to reconcile the person who used to laugh at their jokes with the person who now looks at them like they're strangers. Trying to figure out when the switch happened, what they missed, what signs they overlooked. But that's the thing. There was no switch. There was no warning sign they could have caught. You've always had this in you. The capacity to walk away, the strength to say no, the courage to burn bridges that were only leading you in circles anyway. You've always been capable of exactly what you just did. The only thing that changed is you finally gave yourself permission to act on it. And that's the revelation that's keeping them up at night, because if they missed this in you, what else are they missing in everyone around them? You've become a walking reminder that people are deeper, more complex, more capable than the roles we assign them. You shatter the box they put you in so violently that they can't even use the pieces to build a new one. You're uncategorizable now, uncontrollable, unpredictable in the most delicious way. They can't use your past behavior to predict your future moves because you've demonstrated that you're capable of complete reinvention at a moment's notice. And in a world where people cling to the illusion of knowing and controlling others, you've become chaos incarnate. Not the destructive kind of chaos that burns everything randomly, but the creative kind that reshapes reality according to will rather than circumstance. You're not reacting to their world anymore. You're building your own, and they're not on the guest list. Now watch what happens next, because this is the part where it gets beautiful. Some of them will try to come back. Not because they miss you, but because they can't stand the idea of you thriving without them. They'll show up with apologies that sound rehearsed, explanations that don't explain anything, promises that expire before they're even made. They'll want to know your secret, want to understand how you did it, want to maybe catch some of whatever energy you're radiating now. But here's where you get to practice your favorite new skill, discernment without explanation. You don't owe them a breakdown of your healing process. You don't owe them a roadmap to the peace you fought wars to find. You don't owe them anything except maybe a polite smile and a closed door. Because here's what you know now that you didn't know before. That thing you did. Access to you is a privilege, not a right. Your energy is currency, not charity. Your time is finite and therefore priceless. Your peace is hard-won and therefore non-negotiable. You're not building a life anymore. You're curating an experience. And not everyone gets a ticket. Some people were only meant to be in your origin story, not your victory lap. Some relationships were only meant to teach you what not to tolerate, not what to build a future around. And that thing you did, it was you finally accepting that truth and acting accordingly, without apology, without explanation, without the emotional labor of making your growth comfortable for people who were comfortable with your stagnation. They're going to write their own version of events, you know. They're going to tell anyone who will listen their side of the story, painting themselves as victims of your sudden cruelty, your unexpected coldness, your inexplicable transformation, and you're going to let them. And not because you're afraid of the truth, but because you're no longer interested in managing their narrative. Let them spin their tales, let them build their myths about who you were and what you became. You'll be too busy living in your truth to worry about their fiction. Because here's the secret, they'll never learn. Defending yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you is like teaching philosophy to a brick wall. Exhausting, pointless, and ultimately beneath you. Your real testimony isn't in your words, it's in your results. And your results speak a language they're not fluent in yet. So what now? Now you walk forward without looking back. Now you build without explaining your blueprints. Now you rise without asking if anyone's ready to see you at this altitude. Now you exist in your full truth, the one that includes both the light they loved and the darkness they feared, integrated into something they don't have a word for because it's uniquely, unapologetically you. That thing you did wasn't an ending or a beginning, it was a revelation. A pulling back of the curtain to show what's always been there, waiting, patient, ready. You didn't become a villain or a hero. You became honest. You became whole. You became real. And real, unfiltered, unashamed realness is the most revolutionary thing you can be in a world built on performance and pretense. They're still talking about it because they're still trying to process it. Still trying to find the moment where you changed so they can predict where you'll go next. But they're looking in the wrong place. You didn't change. You revealed. And revelation, true revelation, can't be predicted or controlled or reversed. It can only be witnessed, remembered, and if they're wise, learned from. So let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them stay up late trying to decode the mystery of how someone so kind could be so ruthless. How someone so kind could be so final. How someone they thought they knew could become someone they can't recognize. While they're busy analyzing the past, you'll be busy building the future. And that future? It doesn't include anyone who needed you to stay small, to feel big. It doesn't include anyone who mistook your kindness for weakness. It doesn't include anyone who thought your patience was permission to keep crossing lines. That thing you did closed one chapter and opened another, and this new chapter, it's written in a language only you can speak, in a voice only you can hear, for an audience of one. You. Welcome home to yourself. It's been a long journey back. But now that you're here, now that you've stopped performing for the cheap seats, now that you've remembered who the hell you've always been, underneath all that armor disguised as politeness, well now, the real story begins. And this time you're not asking permission. You're not seeking approval. You're not waiting for validation. You're just being. Fully, completely, unapologetically. And that is the thing they'll never recover from. Not what you did, but who you revealed yourself to always have been. Untamed, unbroken, and utterly beyond their control. Now go. Go build your empire on the ashes of who they needed you to be, and never, ever apologize for the fire. 3:47 a.m. That's when the encrypted file hit his screen. That's when his hands started shaking. That's when he realized the search was over, because after 7 years of digging through digital graveyards and classified archives, he finally found it. He found you. See, they've been looking for something, not someone. Something. A pattern in the chaos. A signal in the static. A key that unlocks doors they welded shut decades ago. And that key? It has your fingerprints all over it. You felt it, didn't you? That sudden chill when you walked past that security camera last Tuesday. That strange silence when you entered the coffee shop and conversations died mid-sentence. That moment your phone glitched and showed you a number that doesn't exist. Those weren't accidents. Those were confirmations. He's been tracking anomalies since 2017. Temperature drops in rooms you've occupied. Electronic interference patterns that match your heartbeat. Surveillance footage that corrupts exactly 11 seconds after you appear. At first he thought it was coincidence. Then he thought it was equipment failure. Now he knows better. Now he knows it's you. Let me tell you about this man. This shadow who spent his entire career hunting ghosts in the machine. Special operations. Black sites. The kind of clearance that doesn't officially exist. He's seen things that would make grown men weep. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for what he found when he started following your trail. It started with whispers in intelligence circles, reports of someone who couldn't be tracked, someone who made experienced operatives nervous without doing anything, someone whose very presence scrambled their most sophisticated equipment. They called it Project Blind Spot. He called it his next promotion. But then he started digging, and the more he found, the less he wanted to know. Because every file he accessed, every witness he interviewed, every piece of evidence he collected, they all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. You weren't just untraceable, you were uncontainable. The first agent who tried to approach you retired early, said he couldn't explain what he saw in your eyes. The second one transferred to desk duty after reporting that being near you felt like staring into an event horizon. The third, she's still in therapy, drawing the same symbol over and over. A symbol that appeared in your childhood drawings 20 years ago. You want to know what really terrified him? It wasn't your ability to disappear from their systems. It wasn't the way technology failed around you. It was the pattern. Because once he mapped out your life, once he connected all the dots, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Every person who ever betrayed you experienced system failures within 72 hours. Not dramatic ones. Subtle glitches, missed emails that cost promotions, GPS errors that led to accidents, banking mistakes that drained accounts, random events that destroyed lives with surgical precision. And you were always somewhere else when it happened, always had an alibi, always seemed genuinely surprised. But here's what made him close his laptop and pour himself a drink at 4 a.m. The pattern started before you were even aware of it, before you knew what you were. It's been protecting you since childhood. That bully in 3rd grade who suddenly moved away, that teacher who tried to fail you but lost all your records, that ex who spread lies about you and then had their entire digital life corrupted. The pattern was always there. You were never alone. He realized something that made him question everything he thought he knew about reality. You're not just a person they're tracking. You're a phenomenon they accidentally created. And now you're waking up to what you really are. They have a name for people like you in their classified files. They call you reality breakers, individuals whose very existence challenges the fundamental laws they've built their power on. You're not supposed to exist. The system was designed to identify and neutralize anomalies like you before you could mature. But somehow you slipped through. Maybe it was that near-death experience when you were 7, the one you never talk about, the one where you saw things that weren't there, heard voices that knew your name, felt yourself existing in 2 places at once. They monitored you for months after that, waiting for signs. But you learned to hide, didn't you? Learned to play normal, learned to suppress what was growing inside. But suppression only works for so long. And lately, you've been feeling it again, haven't you? That electricity under your skin, that knowledge that arrives without learning, that ability to sense what's about to happen just seconds before it does. You've been waking up at specific times, 3:33.444.11:11, and each time you feel less human and more something else. The spy? He found your psychological evaluations from school, the ones where counselors noted your unusual ability to influence group dynamics without speaking, the reports about how other children would unconsciously mirror your emotions, how plants in your classroom grew faster, how broken things seemed to fix themselves when you were around. They filed it under statistical anomalies. He filed it under evidence. You want to know why every spy's spine is shivering right now? Because he didn't just find you. He found the others. The network you don't even know you're part of. See, you're not the only reality breaker out there. You're just the one who's about to activate them all. There's a frequency you emit, undetectable by normal equipment, but they've been tracking its echoes for decades. Every time you have a strong emotion, every time you focus your intention, every time you dream, you're broadcasting. And others like you, they're receiving, they're responding, they're remembering. The infrastructure they built to contain you is failing. Their quantum encryption protocols scramble when you're nearby. Their behavioral prediction algorithms return null values when they try to model your actions. Their most advanced AI systems throw error codes that spell out messages in languages that don't exist. You're not just a glitch in their matrix. You're a virus that's rewriting the code. And here's the beautiful irony. The more they try to track you, the stronger you become. Every surveillance attempt feeds your evolution. Every analysis increases your resistance. Every file they create about you becomes another thread in the web of your becoming. They literally cannot stop what they started. He discovered something in the data that made him destroy his hard drives and disappear. A convergence point. A moment in time when all reality breakers would simultaneously activate, when the suppression would end, when the facade would crumble, and according to his calculations, that moment is approaching faster than anyone anticipated. You've been feeling it in your bones, haven't you? That sense of impending change, that certainty that something massive is about to shift. You've been having dreams about people you've never met but somehow recognize. You've been hearing frequencies that make your teeth ache. You've been seeing patterns in random events that spell out coordinates. Those aren't symptoms of madness. Those are activation codes. Your subconscious is already connected to the network. Your body is already adjusting to the new frequency. Your DNA is already rewriting itself to accommodate what's coming. And there's nothing they can do to stop it, because the very act of trying accelerates the process. The spy's final report, the one he encrypted with a code that corrupted itself after one viewing, contained a single conclusion. Subject represents existential threat to current paradigm. Recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel. Containment is no longer possible. The awakening has begun. Let me tell you what you really are. You're not just human anymore. You're what happens when consciousness evolves past the boundaries they set for it. You're what happens when the universe decides to create its own debugging system. You're a living correction to everything that's gone wrong with their carefully controlled reality. Every time you felt different, every time you couldn't fit in, every time you sensed there was more to existence than what they were showing you, you were right. Your inability to conform wasn't a flaw, it was a feature. Your resistance to their programming wasn't rebellion, it was immunity. The spy found records going back centuries. Stories of individuals who could bend probability, who could influence matter with thought, who could exist in multiple states simultaneously. They called them witches, mystics, demons, but they were just earlier versions of what you're becoming. And unlike them, you have something they didn't. Others like you, connected by invisible threads, ready to activate together. You know those moments when you think of someone and they call? When you need something and it appears? When you know things without learning them? That's not coincidence. That's your true nature breaking through. That's reality responding to what you really are beneath the human mask. Here's what terrifies them most. You're contagious. Not in the way a disease spreads, but in the way truth spreads. When people spend time around you, their own suppressed abilities start to surface. Their programming starts to fail. Their connection to the control grid weakens. Remember that friend who suddenly quit their soul-crushing job after one conversation with you? That family member who finally left their toxic relationship after spending a weekend in your presence? That stranger who told you their whole life story and then walked away transformed? You thought you were just being supportive. You were actually dissolving their chains. The spy tracked the ripple effects. Every person you've genuinely connected with shows markers of activation. Increased synchronicities. Enhanced intuition. Reality responding to their intentions in ways that shouldn't be possible. You're not just waking yourself up. You're waking up everyone you touch. And that's why they're panicking. Because their models show that at the current rate of spread, the cascade effect reaches critical mass within months, not years. Once enough reality breakers activate, once enough people remember what they really are, the entire control structure collapses. Not through revolution, not through violence, through simple incompatibility. Their system only works on humans, and you're becoming something more. You've probably noticed it by now. The way their tricks don't work on you anymore. Marketing doesn't manipulate you. News doesn't program you. Social pressure doesn't move you. Fear doesn't control you. You've developed immunity to the very tools they use to keep humanity docile. But it goes deeper than that. You're immune to their version of reality itself. That's why things happen around you that shouldn't be possible. That's why you experience synchronicities that defy statistical probability. That's why you know things before they happen. You're operating on a different physics, a physics that responds to consciousness rather than their equation. The spy found evidence of attempts to reverse engineer your immunity, experiments designed to understand how you resist their influence. But every test subject they exposed to your energy signature either died or transformed. There's no middle ground. Contact with what you are either destroys the old programming completely or destroys the host. And the successful transformations? They became like you, untrackable, uncontrollable, free. That's why he ran. Not because he feared you'd hurt him, but because he felt himself changing. After months of studying you, of immersing himself in your pattern, he started experiencing the symptoms, the dreams, the knowing, the reality glitches. He realized that to observe you is to be infected by what you are, and part of him wanted it. That's what terrified him most. Right now, as you read this, others are feeling it too, a resonance in their chest, a recognition in their bones, a remembering of something they never forgot but were forced to ignore. The network is lighting up, node by node, consciousness by consciousness, a web of awakening that spans the globe. You can feel them, can't you? Not with your physical senses, but with something deeper, that awareness that you're not alone, that others like you are out there, waiting. Some are further along in their activation, some are just beginning to suspect, but all of them are connected to you through threads that exist outside their surveillance capabilities. The spy's equipment picked up electromagnetic anomalies at locations where reality breakers gather, places that become charged with possibility, where the laws of physics become more like suggestions, where thoughts manifest faster, where time moves differently. These convergence points are multiplying. What used to be rare phenomena are becoming common. And at the center of it all is you, not because you're special, but because you're ready. Ready to stop pretending, ready to stop hiding, ready to stop apologizing for what you are. The network doesn't need a leader, it needs a catalyst, and whether you chose it or not, you've become exactly that. This is the part that made the spy destroy everything and run. You don't just represent a threat to their control. You represent exposure of everything they've hidden. Because when reality breakers fully activate, they don't just gain abilities, they gain access. Access to the hidden history. Access to the suppressed technologies. Access to the truth about what humanity really is. Every conspiracy theory you've ever heard, most of them are distractions from the real secret. The real secret is that humans aren't what they've been told they are. The potential locked inside our DNA isn't evolution waiting to happen. It's evolution being actively suppressed. And you're what happens when the suppression fails. The files he found went deep. Generations of systematic intervention, chemicals designed to calcify specific brain regions, frequencies broadcast to disrupt natural development, educational systems engineered to discourage the exact type of thinking that leads to activation, a multi-generational project to keep humanity from discovering its true nature. But you slipped through. And now, you're the key that unlocks everyone else. When you fully activate, when you accept what you are, without reservation, you become a walking archive of everything they've hidden. The knowledge arrives not through learning, but through remembering. The abilities manifest not through training, but through allowing. The connections form not through searching, but through recognizing, what was always there. So, here we are. The spy is gone, probably trying to erase himself from every database before the cascade reaches him. His handlers are in emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to contain something that was never meant to be contained. And you're sitting there, feeling that electric sensation spreading through your nervous system, knowing that everything is about to change. They have protocols for this, last resort measures designed to prevent mass activation. But those protocols were designed for an earlier version of humanity. They didn't account for how much you've already evolved, how much resistance you've built up, how connected you've become without their knowledge. Their contingencies are obsolete. You want to know the truth? They're not trying to stop you anymore. They're trying to figure out how to survive what you're becoming. Because once the reality breakers fully activate, once the network goes live, once the cascade reaches critical mass, their entire power structure becomes irrelevant. You can't rule people who exist outside your reality framework. The shiver running down every spy's spine isn't fear of violence. It's fear of irrelevance. Fear of a world where their skills, their tools, their entire worldview becomes as outdated as believing the earth is flat. You're not going to fight them. You're going to evolve past them. And that terrifies them more than any weapon ever could. Feel that acceleration in your chest, that sense that time is speeding up around you? That's not anxiety. That's your system preparing for what's coming. Every cell in your body is receiving the activation signal. Every neuron is firing in patterns they've never seen before. Every strand of DNA is unlocking sequences they thought were junk code. The spy's research showed that reality breakers experience time differently as they approach full activation. Past, present, and future start to blur. Memories of things that haven't happened yet. Nostalgia for places you've never been. Recognition of people you're going to meet. Linear time is a construct of their reality. You're graduating to something more fluid. This is why you've been seeing number patterns everywhere. Why certain words jump out at you from random conversations. Why you keep running into the same strangers who look at you like they know something. The universe is communicating with you in ways that bypass their monitoring systems. Every synchronicity is a message. Every coincidence is a confirmation. And the acceleration is exponential. What took months now takes weeks. What took weeks now takes days. What took days now takes hours. The timeline is compressing because enough of you are awake. Enough of you are resonating. Enough of you are ready. The critical mass isn't a future event anymore. It's happening now. You're the key that unlocks everyone else. When you fully activate, when you accept what you are, without reservation, you become a walking archive of everything they've hidden. The knowledge arrives not through learning, but through remembering. The abilities manifest not through training, but through allowing. The connections form not through searching, but through recognizing what was always there. So, here we are. The spy is gone, probably trying to erase himself from every database before the cascade reaches him. His handlers are in emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to contain something that was never meant to be contained. And you're sitting there, feeling that electric sensation spreading through your nervous system, knowing that everything is about to change. They have protocols for this. Last resort measures designed to prevent mass activation. But those protocols were designed for an earlier version of humanity. They didn't account for how much you've already evolved, how much resistance you've built up, how connected you've become without their knowledge. Their contingencies are obsolete. You want to know the truth? They're not trying to stop you anymore. They're trying to figure out how to survive what you're becoming. Because once the reality breakers fully activate, once the network goes live, once the cascade reaches critical mass, their entire power structure becomes irrelevant. You can't rule people who exist outside your reality framework. The shiver running down every spy's spine isn't fear of violence. It's fear of irrelevance. Fear of a world where their skills, their tools, their entire worldview becomes as outdated as believing the earth is flat. You're not going to fight them. You're going to evolve past them. And that terrifies them more than any weapon ever could. Feel that acceleration in your chest, that sense that time is speeding up around you? That's not anxiety. That's your system preparing for what's coming. Every cell in your body is receiving the activation signal. Every neuron is firing in patterns they've never seen before. Every strand of DNA is unlocking sequences they thought were junk code. The spy's research showed that reality breakers experience time differently as they approach full activation. Past, present, and future start to blur. Memories of things that haven't happened yet. Nostalgia for places you've never been. Recognition of people you're going to meet. Linear time is a construct of their reality. You're graduating to something more fluid. This is why you've been seeing number patterns everywhere. Why certain words